Imagine an ordinary day in a small coastal city in California. People are going about their lives, fishermen are working in the harbor, cars are moving through the streets, and the Pacific Ocean is quietly
Looks like a
washing
good day for
against
a
the
catch.
shore. Nobody in Crescent City could imagine that
Yeah,
within a
the
few
tide's
hours,
just right.
that same ocean would become a massive destructive force. And the most terrifying part wasn't even the first wave. It all began hundreds of miles away from California. On March 27, 1964, one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded struck Alaska. The earthquake reached a magnitude of approximately 9.2.
Look
The
out! The
ground
building is
moved
coming
with such
down!
incredible force that its effects were felt far
We need
beyond
to get cover
Alaska.
now!
But something even more dangerous happened beneath the ocean. The movement of the Earth's crust suddenly displaced an enormous amount of water. Across the Pacific, a series of tsunami waves began spreading outward. At first, in the open ocean, the waves might not have looked particularly impressive. But a tsunami isn't an ordinary ocean wave. It carries an enormous amount of water and can travel across vast distances. And one of those waves was heading toward the California coast. Several hours after the earthquake, the danger reached Crescent City. But the city had a major problem. It was located directly beside the ocean, and its harbor and low-lying coastal areas were especially vulnerable to a powerful tsunami. When authorities learned about the threat, they began warning residents. People had time to leave the most dangerous areas. It seemed like the worst could be prevented, but nobody yet knew just how serious this disaster would become. When the first waves reached Crescent City, the water began moving violently. It surged into the harbor and then pulled back. Boats were thrown around by powerful currents. Water rushed between the docks and damaged parts of the waterfront infrastructure. Some residents watched the event from safer locations. And that's where one of the most dangerous things about tsunamis happen. The first wave wasn't necessarily the biggest. When the water pulled back, it could have seemed like the main danger was already over. But a tsunami isn't just one wave, it's a series of waves that can arrive one after another. And a later wave can be much more powerful than the first. That's exactly what happened in Crescent City. New surges of water slammed into the harbor. This time, the destruction became much worse. The water moved with enormous force. It carried debris, damaged docks, and destroyed structures along the waterfront. Boats were ripped from their positions. Water pushed into the city's streets. What had been an ordinary American coastal town only hours earlier had become a massive flood zone. But the worst was not over yet. More waves continued to arrive as some rose far above the normal level of the sea. In parts of Crescent City, the water reached more than 20 feet, over 6 meters. Imagine a wall of water as tall as a two-story building moving through a coastal city. That's what made Crescent City one of the hardest hit locations on the US mainland. When the water finally began to retreat, residents were left looking at a completely different city. Docks had been destroyed. Boats had been thrown onto land or badly damaged. Streets were covered with water and debris. Buildings in the coastal areas had suffered severe damage. The harbor, one of the most important parts of the city's economy, had been devastated. But behind all of that destruction were real people. 12 people lost their lives in Crescent City. Many others lost their homes, their possessions, or their livelihoods, and all of it had been triggered by an earthquake that happened far away in Alaska. That's one of the most terrifying things about tsunamis. A disaster can begin thousands of miles away from the place where the worst consequences eventually happen. The earthquake happens in one location. The ocean carries that energy across a huge area, and then the waves reach an entirely different coastline. After the disaster, it became clear just how vulnerable Crescent City was to tsunamis. But the events of 1964 also gave scientists and emergency officials valuable information. It showed how quickly a tsunami could cross the ocean. It showed why the first wave should never be assumed to be the last. And it proved that even a city far away from an earthquake's epicenter can be placed in serious danger. Today, Crescent City still sits beside the same Pacific Ocean. The water can look completely peaceful, people can walk along the shore, boats can sit in the harbor, but beneath that calm surface is an enormous amount of power. And the story of 1964 is a reminder of one simple fact. A tsunami doesn't have to begin near you to destroy your city. It can begin thousands of miles away. It can cross an entire ocean. And when the water finally reaches the shore, there may be very little time left to react. Crescent City survived it once, but the Pacific Ocean hasn't gone anywhere. And that's why the story of the 1964 tsunami remains one of the most important warnings for the American coastline. Because sometimes the ocean looks completely calm until the moment it isn't.